Andy, it was quite a weekend for you. I mean, usually I have something quippy and witty to say. Maybe I think they're quippy and witty, but I guess I'll open up with congratulations, Andy. You're in the NFC Championship game. How's it feel?
Dave, it feels many things. It's very exciting. Congratulations, Lions fans are ecstatic. I think most of America is pretty excited about it. There, I saw a couple graphics that showed who America is supporting, and everywhere that's not like beholden to a local team is cheering on the Lions. I think people are excited about a good story about a long overdue team, a hurting franchise. It's playing great football, and it was really exciting to watch them beat the Bucks yesterday. I was on Threads a lot throughout the game and throughout the day, and it was fun to see Lions fans rallying around the team and just, I mean, really, a lot of us just genuinely overwhelmed seeing the team succeed. So super excited to be back in the NFC Championship. For me personally, Dave, um, it's a mixed feeling though, right? There's a part of me that's very excited about this, right? I mean, the Lions have at this point met all expectations for the season, but for those that are Gen X enough to have been around and watched the last time the Lions made it to the NFC Championship, I was still a relatively new Lions fan at that time, like as far as them being my team, right? And they made it to that 1991 championship against Washington, and even though they lost, they got smashed. It was kind of like, hey, Barry Sanders, good team. They're going to be back, and they're going to be able to make a run all the way. And Dave, never again. It's been a 30-year drought since the Lions were in the NFC Championship game. So part of me, seeing the 49ers, a very good team, is petrified that we get to the championship this year. Whatever happens, happens. And, you don't know if you're going to make it back, right? So I'm hoping this isn't the peak of the new Lions, but just the start. But there's a part of me that's very anxious about this upcoming weekend and where it goes and where the Lions go from here. But super excited. It's an exciting weekend. Lions fans are very happy, and it's fun to see all the support for the team. And it's going to be, I think, a heck of a game in San Francisco. And how about them Chiefs? And that was great.
Yeah, it was really a great weekend of football. I think I said last weekend it was not very good. This weekend, we start off with the Texans and the Ravens, and that was it was good for first half. I think I even said that. I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if early in the third quarter this is a game,
Yeah.
but I did think that Lamar and the Ravens were going to pull it out. So and they did, and became quite. I mean, it was really 10-10 at halftime, but that one punt return was so really it could have been a lot worse for the Texans. But hey, kudos to them. They had the second and third pick or whatever it was this year. They made two great draft picks
Yeah.
and they turned it around real quick. I mean, so great season for them. And the Ravens continue their season. Then you had the Niners and Green Bay, and I think Green Bay's got to be kicking themselves thinking that they could have, should have won that
Yeah.
game. Brock Purdy, I all I could think of Andy, was our MVP debate about Brock Purdy earlier this year, and he looked awful until the
Yeah.
last drive. So all I could think about is just coming on here and listening to you, and not wanting to hear that. And then you had, yeah, the Lions game was really good. I was surprised how good Tampa Bay played, though. Baker Mayfield came out and played, and Mike Evans was tough, but the Lions, when they needed it, they got it. And then the last game, wow! I mean, at Buffalo, how many more ways can you lose a game? Um, I thought they looked really good for long parts of it, but they couldn't stop Kansas City either. Then now Buffalo's defense was like down four, five, or six people or something at some point, but it's gonna be it was good. And I think next weekend's gonna be a great football too. You know, Lamar versus Mahomes, and then you have Jared Goff and the Lions, who I think everybody is rooting for, against the Niners and Brock Purdy. So um, interesting dynamic here. Jared Goff, the number one draft pick in his draft class, and Brock Purdy, the last pick of his draft class. So number one with the last. Let's see how it plays out. So what are your thoughts going into the next week?
Well, I'll say one, Dave. Kudos to us. We got it right this last weekend after kind of blowing the wild card weekend. We got all four games right this weekend. So good job us, as we both agreed on the matchups. And I think look, Lamar and the Ravens looked awesome in that second half of football, and they look like they've looked throughout most of the season. They're going to be very hard to beat, and I'm glad. One, I'm glad Kansas City beat Buffalo because it's just funny to me that Kansas City always beats Buffalo in the playoffs. And Kansas City, sixth consecutive AFC Championship game, is phenomenal, right? I mean, only the New England Patriots in their peak did better, which is amazing. I think it's appropriate that the Ravens have to beat the Chiefs to get to the Super Bowl. I think that that'd be an appropriate way to get there. Beat the team that's just dominated the last few years. It's going to be a great game. And even though I think Baltimore should win that game, man, you can never count Kansas City out. So I think it's going to be a heck of a matchup in the early game. And you're right. I mean, the Goff Purdy matchup, Purdy looked like garbage that entire game except for the end. Like you said, he was throwing dumb passes, and the Niners did what the Niners do. They're an incredible, talented team. Picked up yards after the catch and were just so hard to stop. Debo before he got hurt, McCaffrey, I mean, even George Kittle, even though they dropped a couple of balls, played good when he needed to play good. They're a great team, and I mean, I think it's going to be a tough matchup. I don't think they're going to be able to destroy the Lions. I think it's going to be a fight, and I think it's going to be a good game. And I think either of those games could go either way. We should see a Ravens Niners Super Bowl. We could see any combination of those teams. So I think it's going to be really exciting, Dave. I'm looking forward to it. You'll probably be able to hear me screaming anywhere across America, during the Lions game because I'll be going hard and loud for that. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And yeah, I think we've got a lot of storylines to talk about this week, as people watch the NFL and see where things go. So it'll be exciting.
Yeah, definitely make for a good weekend. And Championship Sunday is always the fun one. You have that was it like 3 o'clock game and then a 6:30 game, and so both games are over by 10 o'clock, 9:30, 10 o'clock, and then you can get to bed at a reasonable hour on like
Yeah.
some of these sporting things where you're up to 12 o'clock or something. So, okay, so good stuff. We'll talk NFL later on this week. Andy, aside from the NFL news, we also had a lot of political news
Yeah.
this week. And really, we have the New Hampshire primary, the first primary, if you want to dub that. Everyone's trying to make some things. You had the caucus last week, the first primary this week. And then the big one is South Carolina and then Super Tuesday. I'm not sure we'll get there, Andy, because Ron DeSantis dropped out. It's really a two-person race for the Republican nomination. And really, everybody took DeSantis dropping out as really the coronation of Trump this week and not giving Nikki Haley much of a boost because a lot of the DeSantis voters will go to Trump more likely than not. And so Nikki Haley did, some of the polling did put her in single digits. Now it's back to about double digits again. So that was big news this weekend, Andy. What are your thoughts on the DeSantis news?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible to see him out of the race in the sense that he was sort of the coronated Republican nominee. For those that weren't supporting Trump initially, Fox News and then the Murdoch machine rallied behind DeSantis, and when he was getting ready to make his announcement, all the cheers were there for him. And like many before, you come in as that front runner, so to speak. Trump was really the front runner, and you just can't get it done, and he couldn't. His campaign never got off the ground successfully. And so this wasn't a surprise. Maybe a surprise he went out before New Hampshire, but not really. So interesting to see that play out. And now it's really, like I said, it's a two-person race, and I think it's going to be a lot about expectations, right? And so Trump is in a very strong position to win this thing and wrap it up quickly. And new polls show him increasing his lead, as Nikki Haley's had a little bit of struggle the last week. And so I think can she surpass expectations in New Hampshire? Can she surpass expectations in her home state of South Carolina, where Mr. Trump has a strong, strong lead? I think she has to, and if she doesn't, I think she'll find herself out of the race pretty quickly. But if she can surpass expectations, then she can start to regain some momentum and maybe make a fight of things. So this is really a big fight for the direction of the Republican Party. They didn't have this dog race in the last time around. Trump was not fighting one person, and so the Republicans really have to decide: is their party Trump's party, or is it something else, something maybe a little bit more akin to what it used to be? And that's a big identity to decide. And I think voters are going to decide that in the next couple of weeks, and we're going to see it play out. I think it's going to be hard for Nikki Haley, but you never know how these things are going to go. So it'll be almost as fun to watch as the NFL playoffs.
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard for her. I mean, I do want to go back to DeSantis real quick. He spent an unbelievable amount of money. I think that he's now set the record for most dollars spent for ultimately the votes gained.
Yeah,
So I think he spent over, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 30 million of his own campaign money. And then he had a super PAC, the Never Back Down super PAC that was somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 to 100 million extra money. And it was something that averaged out to about $6,400 per vote, which is unbelievable.
yeah,
That one, that amount of money went into that, and two, that they just blindly gave that money for somebody who really doesn't have much of anything. And I don't agree with Trump a whole lot, but look, I mean, if you go back to DeSantis in the beginning, I think people forget he was in a nip and tuck race for governor for his first time. And the Democratic candidate had some really huge missteps until, including some very personal matters leaked out to the press
yeah,
on some things, and Trump had endorsed him at that time, and so Trump really did make DeSantis, and then he capitalized on COVID and all this other stuff to push back against the media and get to this campaign. So what a colossal failure! He'll end up in Florida. He'll wrap up his governorship. More talk now is about his wife running for things than him having any more political future. So we'll see on that. Interesting on the Nikki Haley versus Donald Trump part. Over the weekend, Donald Trump was speaking about Nikki Haley, and he was associating her with January 6th and the ability, like her. I guess what he was saying is that she had the ability to make, steps on the Capitol and get more police support and more federal support, and she denied it, or she declined it. Trump was really referring to Nancy Pelosi, and so Nikki Haley picked up on that quickly and said, "Look, he's not competent enough to be the president." And I don't disagree. These
yeah.
missteps are not; these are not slip of tongues. These are not, us calling our kids different names. This is real. I mean, Trump's almost 80. We are going to have one of the. I mean, this is shaping up to be some of the worst candidates we've had in a long time, Andy. So I'm not sure she has a chance, but we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was an interesting one, Dave. I mean, with Trump, you never know when he's being, delusional and when he's genuinely doing things on purpose. Was he purposely mixing things up to, associate, Nancy Pelosi and Nikki Haley together and confuse voters, but get them excited about, things he's saying. Sometimes I almost think he does it on purpose, but more, I agree with you. I think the reality is he loses track of what he's saying, and that happens to everybody when you speak as much as politicians do. But this isn't, like you said, calling one city another city's name while you're on the road. It's completely confusing who you're even talking about. I think that's something voters should, be cognizant of, right? I mean, we make a lot of fun of Joe Biden and his, shaking hands of people that aren't present and general state of confusion. Trump's in exactly the same boat, right? I mean,
Yeah.
exactly the same boat. They're equally, almost equal in age. Neither's a young man. Trump's made a big sort of effort the last couple of weeks. As he's had to deal with Nancy. Now I'm getting confused. Deal with Nikki Haley on emphasizing how young he feels, his cognitive ability, how smart he is. He's really emphasized it because the reality is he is a lot older than Nikki Haley and a lot older than most voters want in their president today. And I think that's whether you're a hardcore Trump guy or not, that should have been part of the calculation, and it wasn't because if voters cared, they would have gone to Ron DeSantis, who might come back in 4 years and do well. But I think it's an important thing when you're concerned about your two leading candidates, perhaps not being 100% there mentally and only getting older as they serve in the hardest job in the world, which isn't something to be excited about for Americans.
Yeah, I agree. Andy, I'll just wrap up with this on this topic, but you'd mentioned earlier is are they going to be the party of Trump or not? When Trump lost in 2020, it was the opportunity to say, hey, we're going to move beyond this and hey, that was fun for 4 years and we'll return to the party that we should be, and they probably would have had much more success in terms of governing. but they chose not to, and in fact, they've embraced it more. And I don't think that I think it's now the Trump part. I mean, I, I was saying, hopefully that some of the old MAGA people could move away from the GOP, but I think it's the GOP has to move away now. The hard Republicans, they need to probably branch away because that party's never coming back to what it used to be. And so I don't. It is where it is. So good riddance in my mind. I mean, I'm sure Trump is going to be very competitive in this election. I just don't think long term it's for the best. All right, Andy, let's move on to another topic. So, Andy, this weekend it was a daddy daughter weekend. My wife had a weekend away with one of her close friends, and I had the opportunity again to spend time with my daughters. My oldest daughter was out with her friends, so it was mostly with my youngest daughter. On Saturday, we decided to go watch a movie, and we're looking through the movies and just trying to pick what we want. And there was a couple selections. We wound up going to Wonka, Andy. Have you heard about Wonka?
I mean, I've heard about Dave. Of course, I know, Gene Wilder's version back in the 80s, but I don't know much about the current version, except for, of course, it's got a very popular young actor, in that leading role. But I don't know anything about it. Don't know if it's good, bad. Haven't seen it. So what's the pounder take here?
Yeah, so look, I had heard a lot of things bad about it, and it was going to be a disaster, and it was going to be like Timothy Chalamet, who's like the actor you're talking about. He really has an impressive career. He's been in Dune. I really like Dune, but this was a different take, and we all know Johnny Depp's version of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and a little weirder and such. And so you're like, how is this going to play out? Well, this is the origin story of Willy Wonka, or effectively the origin story. And I have to tell you, I love this movie. It was fun. The songs were really nice and catchy, and it didn't take itself too seriously. It didn't try to make any political statements. It just told a story in a fun way. Timothy Chalamet was really good in the Wonka role. And I really enjoyed it. I'm sitting there in the movie, and I'm just thinking, I was like, this is why we want to go to the movies. Like, this is what the movies can bring out of things. And I feel like we've gotten away from that much over the last several years. And look, I know the big budget of we talked about Oppenheimer, and then there's Barbie, but like if you look beyond some of those, there's a little undertone on all that. The Barbie obviously is, asserting the female voice and feminism, and all great and wonderful in a fun way, of course. But Ken was not exactly the role model character there. The men in that show were not very, and so you can look at that. Oppenheimer, of course, deals with a very serious topic, but like Wonka was just a fun movie, and there's a fun show. It had a lot of great music, great acting in it all along, and I left just happy. I
Yeah.
just left happy, and I'm reminded of a scene from that old Adam Sandler movie, Bedtime Stories. And my wife, my daughter, and I watched that Friday night because I introduced her to some Adam Sandler stuff. But
That's a
um,
dangerous place to go, Dave.
I know, especially with a 7-year-old daughter. But this is a fun one, and in that scene, Adam Sandler's pitching his version of what a hotel is, and he's saying, you know, if people wanted to stay home and have all these comforts at home, they would stay home. They don't, but they want to go to a hotel because it's magical. They want to get away from their home life in some respects, and they want to go to a place where it's going to be fun. I feel the same way about movies. Look, I can stream all day long. I can watch these movies, but it doesn't like it may not always bring me the same thing. I went to the movie, I got away. Yes, and I just had fun. I don't
Yeah.
know, Andy. That's what I feel like movies should be, and that's probably why the movie industry and the theater industry might be struggling a little bit because we've gotten away from just these fun movies, and we've overanalyzed and overthought some of them. That they're just not that way anymore. I don't know, Andy.
I appreciate that a lot, Dave, to be honest, because I think that we live in a time when everything is politically calculated and thought out and has underlying tones. And not that, that's been around forever, but you've talked about on the show before about sort of the old comedies, right? And the fact we don't have those as much anymore. I mean, you just look back at, you can go back to the 80s, right? Steve Martin and John Candy, Chevy Chase and Eddie Murphy, and like just those are just fun movies. Same thing with the action movies. And you come, into the 90s, you got, Chris Farley, poor guy passed away before he should have, because him and David Spade, what a great duo they were together, and movies like Tommy Boy, and just things like that. And you don't have as much of that today, where you just go to the movies and disconnect and just have fun for a couple hours, eat your popcorn, drink your Coke, and walk out of there smiling, laughing, and feeling good. It's just things are heavier, and sometimes they're heavier than they need to be. So I think you're right. Just go, and it's fun to disconnect, step out of reality, have fun, and enjoy yourself. And I think we don't do that enough anymore, because we're so focused on everything else that has to be thought about and included in the divisiveness of going back to DeSantis, right? The DeSantis Disney wars and so forth. It just makes things less enjoyable. So I'm glad you had a chance to do that with your daughter. I think, yeah, you definitely got to tread lightly introducing her Adam Sandler movies, I think. But we both love that guy, from his movies to his CDs. I mean, Adam Sandler singing the Hanukkah song is still one of the funniest things I've ever heard in my life. But I'm glad you guys had fun and a chance to enjoy that together. That's great, and that's time well spent.
Yeah, yeah, it was definitely enjoyable. We both had a time when we both left very happy. It was
Yeah,
good. So
yeah.
if you haven't seen Wonka, anyone on any of our listeners here, I would recommend going to see it. It is just a disconnect, and you can break away for, I don't even think it was a 2 hour long movie. If it was, it was right there. But yeah, to your point, Andy, it's like we feel like we have to make movies longer. We have to have some dark edge, and the lead character must have some sort of trauma and whatnot. And yes, there was some of that in Wonka. He had a little bit of trauma, understanding his growing up, but it wasn't the main part of the story. It was about him bringing something he loved, and just in a fun way. And it really, I felt honestly, it connected great to the Gene Wilder, or to the Johnny Depp version of it, whatever one you choose to like, but it connected to that. And I felt they did a nice job all around. So, Andy, anything else on top of mind for you that you've got on your mind?
Let me just throw one thing out there that folks might have missed briefly, because I think, similar to what you're talking about the movie, sort of just celebrating good things. The news focuses so much on the bad, right, and on the stress, right, and on election 2024, which you and I both said we want to step away from a little bit here. And about 10 days ago, roughly, NASA made an announcement on their X-59 spacecraft, or not spacecraft, aircraft, right? And the idea that NASA X-59 is they're testing supersonic flight, right? And supersonic flight, that's flying above 750 miles an hour, less than 1,500 miles per hour. Pretty big range, pretty incredibly fast. And in commercial flight, the challenge with this is, the idea that sonic boom like isn't practical for planes to be flying around the country and the world, with sonic booms all over the place. So NASA's testing out the X-59 to see if we can have basically quiet supersonic flight. And if we can get there, that opens up the potential for commercial supersonic flight. Imagine flying, 800 miles an hour from, DC to California, or Ohio to England, right? I mean, it's incredible. And it's incredible science, incredible development, it's incredible opportunity. And it's just a reminder that for all the negative, talk we hear and are consumed by, totally consumed by, even in the movie characters we see, and the darkness of their origin stories and things of that nature, I always like to remind folks that the world is continuously getting better from a technology and quality of life standpoint, right? Technology has never been where it is. Communications has never been where they are today. Awareness of the world has never been where it is today. And overall, things are continuously getting better, and it's exciting to see and be a part of. This is a really exciting step. Kudos to NASA and the team. I think it's Lockheed Martin who's working with them to develop the X-59. And let's see where this goes. And it could be an incredible scientific success if this works. And we remember the Concorde from when you and I were kids, and that got discontinued. But this is a really exciting step, and just a sign of continuous development and improvement in science and in quality of life and experience. I think it's important to celebrate these things. And too often today, these are blips on the radar as we go back to the hate-filled world of politics and war and divisiveness, and so many things we can't control that make us feel lousy. And so it's exciting to see the success of NASA here. I think it's a really exciting step for people to be able to consider supersonic flight. It's really exciting to me, Dave. It gets me a little bit geeked up. I don't know. Any thoughts from your end?
Yeah, no, I think it's another reminder. Like science is awesome in a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
respects. Like there's a lot of really cool things about this type of stuff, and I just for whatever reason this also tied into like Japan recently landed a vehicle on the moon,
yeah.
and we saw some images from that. I mean, how cool are some of these things? We live in a great time for a lot of these scientific explorations and research, and again, we unfortunately we've politicized so much of it. You can't step back and wonder and think about it. I think it is a really cool feeling. It's a really cool thing to see. And if you haven't seen this plane, I mean, it is pretty cool looking. I mean, talk about right out of a science fiction novel or whatever. That's it. And I think it is. We grew up dreaming of these things and understanding and visualizing what that might look like, and here you're seeing it play out in our front. So yeah, very cool, Andy. Definitely very cool. So
And just for the record, Dave, we all know that Japan didn't really land on the moon because we've never been to the moon, and that's all
oh
fakes,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Just a level set here. Like we know, the Earth is
Sounds
and
yep.
the
It,
moon.
it was all studio out in the Mojave Desert
That's
or
right.
wherever that was.
That's right. That's right.
Just like Joe Biden is dead and he's not actually the president of the United States, there's this actor playing his role, right?
We're living out Weekend at Bernie's right now. We are living in the United States of Bernie right now. Dave, I think it's super exciting. I'm glad we've got some positive things to talk about today as we enter this almost last week of January here as we wrap up the last full week of the month. So exciting stuff. And Dave, exciting Lions football.
Yeah, yeah, that is exciting. It is fun. I am rooting for the Lions. It would be what a cool comeback story for the city of Detroit. A lot of really good things going on in that place, and they have a winning football team. So what can you complain about? So, all right, Andy. Anything else before we wrap up the pod?
Nope. Happy Monday to you and all those who are listening. Thanks for joining us.
All right, and same happy Monday to you as well, and to all our listeners. And Andy, I will catch up with you next time.